Mr. Harris, you and I were on a panel together in March, and good to see you again. Could you explain more about how companies' market power exacerbates problems of disinformation, extremist conduct, and bias?
Yeah, well, and it's great to see you again too. Thank you for the question, Senator. If there's anyone with an alternative model to the current problems that plague us in misinformation, disinformation, and virality, can they succeed in the marketplace? There's something in the literature called Metcalfe's law, right, where the power of a network grows exponentially with the number of participants. And really what we have between social media platforms is a race to Metcalfe. Once you have a dominant platform, it's very hard for there to be an alternative. And so market concentration means that even if there are alternatives that are trying to do and solve any of the problems we're talking about today differently, they're going to get bought up by the existing platforms. And if you're a venture capitalist, the only way you're going to fund an existing company is by knowing that there's an exit pathway. And we kind of all learned the lesson as all the sort of competing platforms and things that have come out have just been acquired by the existing companies.
Yeah, and I think that point just can't be lost, because there are regulations we can put in place. That's one way to do it, and you can do both things at once. But if you have a company that buys out everyone from under them, in the words of Mr. Zuckerberg, they'd rather buy than compete, and buys companies like Instagram or WhatsApp, we're never going to know if they could have developed the bells and whistles to help us with misinformation, because there is no competition. Do you want to comment more on that, Mr.?
Yeah, well, I mean, just as you said, if WhatsApp were to remain independent and let's say we're living in some alternative reality where now WhatsApp was separate and we saw these problems and WhatsApp decided they're going to spend billions of more dollars on content moderation because they want to actually be the platform where people can trust. They can't make that choice because Facebook bought them and now they're sort of integrated in how much they're working on these problems. And it's a race to sweep the garbage under someone else's rug. What we've seen, unfortunately, is instead of collaboration between all these platforms, in some cases we've seen, hey, look how bad their problems are because we don't want to pay attention to ours. Not again because they're evil, it's just game theory happening between the companies.
Okay,
it really does.
Thank you. Dr. Donovan, in your research, you've looked at medical misinformation at scale and the role of the social media platforms. Could you please comment on how the sheer size of a few powerful platforms affects the problems that we should be addressing?
Yeah, and thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and I really look forward to reading your book, Antitrust. The problem of medical misinformation, of course, is one that was exacerbated by the pandemic, but anti-vaccination activists have a long history of using social media in order to attack the public understanding of science. But during the pandemic, of course, the way in which the tech companies have turned to medical misinformation is really it's like putting a Band-Aid on an open wound. Right now, what we need is a comprehensive plan for ensuring that people have access to timely, local, relevant, and accurate information like public interest obligations. But instead, what we have is a very slapdash approach to, whatever the breaking news event is of the day. And so I do think that the size of the platform and the way in which medical misinformation scales much more quickly than any intervention is probably the most pressing public health issue of our time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bickert, a recent poll found that nearly 1 in 4 Americans said they will not get the coronavirus vaccine. Meanwhile, a recent report from the Center for Countering Digital Hate identified 12 specific content producers as the original source of an estimated 65% of coronavirus disinformation online. Recently, Senator Lujan and I, after he conducted a hearing, sent a letter to Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg calling on them to remove these individuals from the platforms. Do you agree that more action needs to be taken? What's the response to our letter? I guess I'd start with you, Ms. Bickert, and then go to you, Ms. Culbertson.
Senator, thank you. And thank you for the letter as well. I know that we've assessed that content and removed those accounts that were violating, and I can follow up more with you on the specific details of that. But more broadly, and I think this is a really important issue, we know that we have to get it right when it comes to misinformation around COVID. One of our goals is to help 50 million people get vaccinated. We're doing that both proactively through partnerships with local and national health authorities, making sure that we're directing people to authoritative health information, including where they can get vaccinated. And we've connected more than 2 billion people with those authoritative health resources. But we also, since the very beginning, have been partnering with the CDC to remove content that contradicts CDC guidance that could lead to an increased risk that people could contract or spread COVID. And that includes removing over 12 million pieces of safety-related COVID-19 misinformation.
Okay, and in my role in the Commerce Committee, of course, Senator Cantwell is leading a bill on privacy. Do you agree that consumers should have the ability to access their data and control how it is used, including what data is used in social media company algorithms? Do you give customers that ability now for both content and advertising algorithms? Ms. Bickert.
Senator, thank you. We do give people a number of controls. That includes everything from the ability to download your own information, remove it, control who can see your posts, see what type of, you can opt out of our algorithm. You can see who can see your content at any time, and you can change those settings.
Is the company then supportive of our bill on privacy? Senator Cantwell?
Senator, I'd have to have our U.S. public policy team follow up with you on the specifics of that. But
all right,
controls are very.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm gonna. I'll ask. I can see Senator Coons over his mask is raising his eyebrows at me. That's a sign enough is enough.
No. The chairman welcomes additional questions from the celebrated author of an outstanding book on antitrust.
Okay. Well, I was just going to ask. I'll ask one more question then of Ms. Culbertson from Twitter. Just the original question that I had asked Ms. Bickert about the disinformation dozen, as we call them, the accounts online. And of course, some of these issues that I've had, I'm talking about with market power, is not as applicable to Twitter, which I appreciate. But as a competitive platform. But could you at least answer the question here about this disinformation dozen?
Certainly. Thank you for the question. We have and are continuing to review this particular group of individuals against our policies, and we have taken enforcement action on several of these individuals. Our team will be following up this week with all of the details around that. And also, I just wanted to note that while we are competitors, we are partners to address a lot of really harmful content issues. We've collaborated on COVID. We work together on terrorism, child sexual exploitation, opioids. So I take issue with the premise that was mentioned earlier. There is a collaboration across industry to address some of the most harmful content on the internet. And we also invest heavily in our partnerships with experts, especially around COVID. We worked very closely with the CDC, HHS, the White House to not only enforce against our rules, but to also ensure that people have access to credible information on our service.
So were you saying you take issue with something that I'd said, or was it something
No, Senator. One of the other panelists suggested that we have a competitive edge to compete on addressing these harms where we actually collaborate in a lot of these areas.
Okay, thank you very much.